This is the CHRILLCAST Live. I'm Chris.
And I'm Andrew.
And Will can't be here for reasons. So it's just going to be Andrew and I. It was going to be all three of us to have this discussion, but we're down to two, unfortunately. But we'll be back probably next week. And we have a guest I'm working on lining up, so it should be fun. In the meantime, Andrew and I are going to talk about some things that we find interesting that hopefully some of you guys find interesting as well. Video game laws per the description of the video. So hopefully this doesn't bore you all to death and you unsubscribe from the channel, and we can have some fun with it. All right. Andrew, what about you?
I just want to say, thankfully, the video game laws, they've tended to be reduced in frequency that they get proposed.
Oh, yeah. Like, nobody likes these kinds of laws, honestly.
Yeah.
Like,
I think there's been enough L's taken that they're not as frequent, and now they actually focus on, like, actual concerns, such as, like, oh, you're actually creating a gambling
right, like
slot machine for children. Okay,
that's one of the, like, honestly, a lot of what the European Union does to influence gaming and technology bothers me. But when they got involved with loot boxes, that was fine. I'm totally good with them doing away with that.
In fairness, I have no problem with there being a loot box. If a gaming company wants to sell their soul like that, I'll judge them accordingly. I will judge them accordingly. That's all I can say.
Well, but it can't be incorrectly identified as not gambling on the back of the box.
True.
That's the biggest issue I saw. It was
if
very
you
predatory.
have laws that prevent children from gambling, then you need to be held to that standard.
There shouldn't be a day one update that adds the loot boxes in.
Right.
Like, the SRB should be able to accurately rate the game.
And, I might disagree with there even being a law about an age for gambling, but you probably shouldn't create gambling addicts when they're toddlers and they're just playing with their mom's iPhone and there's like loot box.
There's a lot of studies that show that video games don't necessarily influence like violence and actions and those kinds of things, but that release of endorphins every time you see a box open on screen and you get prizes, that can physically cause a gambling addiction. So there are some ways video games can influence people. They're just not in the ways that most people try to argue it.
Right. And I would make the case that a lot of those, I know we're going a little off topic slightly on the gambling thing, but like even the mobile app games, right? A lot of them are structured inherently like a gambling game.
Oh,
or even like the scratch off tickets,
or they pressure you to buy things.
Right. It's just like just the entire structure has it set up where it's like this little like mini game, and you're
or like you have to wait so many hours if you don't pay money to continue.
Right. And it's just like you got them set up right there. They're going to be waiting outside for the 7-Eleven to open up so they can buy their lotto tickets when they turn 18.
Well, one of the main things, the first time I ever noticed like a game pressing me to spend money was Farmville. Actually, I had I was into Farmville right when it started.
What year? When was that? I'm just curious when that started.
I got to look it up.
The first game I remember pressuring for money was Clash of Clans.
That was way later. It was like 20.
It was, but that's because I didn't play those silly games like
Farmville 3? Holy cow, I didn't realize they had a Farmville 2 even. Okay, so Farmville, and actually the original Farmville, I believe, has been discontinued. It's like you can't even get to it anymore. All right, here we go. Farmville originally launched on June, so 2009. So when Farmville launched, it was essentially a Facebook app. And I remember you would plant the crops, and then you would wait it out for like however many hours you could log back in, and then reap your harvest. And one of the first things that they added was like you could buy speed boosts, so your crops would grow faster, and you wouldn't have to wait nearly as long. You get like similar to Clash of Clans. Instead of waiting 10 hours for your wizards to be created, you buy like 5 gems and you speed that process up. So it was very predatory. Demi Crow's in the chat. Here we go. The only law that a video game broke was taking my money. The Adventure, stupid game.
I was going to say, actually, now that you mention it, I can think of another game. I think it was like Ebony Online or something like that.
Is that the one that always shows like scantily clad women in the
No.
Okay,
It was
that's what I was
basically
thinking of.
It was the precursor to Clash of Clans.
Now you got me curious what on earth this is. If I
It
type
was
this
no,
in and it
it's
turns into something
effectively
else,
Clash of Clans.
I swear if this is what I
No,
think it is,
it's that Free Forever, I think.
Ebony Free Forever. Okay, all right, I'll click on it. Okay,
Yeah.
no, I do remember this.
Yeah, and this was basically Clash of Clans in the beginning. And this thing was, I remember it because I got suckered into playing this game a ridiculous amount when I got my wisdom teeth pulled. And so,
No, like these games will like reel you in because they're free.
they're
They
free,
do have
and then,
some fun mechanics to them. They're
and then they have
simple to
all of these
start.
little time limits on recharging to build things, and
So,
but it's just one of those things.
so I am totally fine with the EU stepping in this particular instance where like predatory things for children I have an issue with because children are easily influenced, especially when it comes to the rush of endorphins from something like a loot box.
Okay.
But I will say I don't think it's more predatory than trading cards. However, unlike trading cards, you can pretty much buy these things anywhere, anytime, as long as you have access to a credit card or money supply.
Okay,
Versus
that's
cards,
the problem,
you have to go to the store.
That's the problem, Will. I mean,
Will.
I saw Will because you got to highlight that because it's
riding the
Will
porcelain pony at the moment.
Chris, okay, you gotta look at it this way, right? The problem with all of it is that parents will just set up their credit cards, and they don't have a good accountability for what their kids do with that credit card on
That's a
whatever
good point.
device it is. Because just like this computer, like this game right here, no different than all the games that pressure for money. It does everything where it's like you can do this for free. Oh wait, you have to wait all the way till tomorrow to play unless you want to pay us money. And it's like, okay, I don't really have a problem with a company wanting to do that, but like the fact that parents can't just set it up not to do payments, like they should have an option where it's like you can't pay without a certain password or something to be entered that only the parent knows.
A lot of times, Andrew, I will say a lot of times though, these games are geared for kids, but they'll say like you can't play unless you're 18 plus. That way they can allow the credit card to be a requirement. So it is a little bit predatory because these games are designed for like your teenagers or even your younger kids in the realm of like Angry Birds, Clash of Clans, those kinds of things. They're like geared for kids, but at the same time, money of it is geared for adults. So there's a problem there. There's a mismatch.
Right. It's tricky, right? Because they should do certain things that they don't do, but it's a should. It's not a shall do. Like,
yeah, I mean, morally, I have issues with it, but I can understand how within the bounds of the law, you're going to do whatever you can to scrape out the most amount of money. Like that's just how people operate, especially when it's a business.
But unless even then, it's on the consumer. It is on the consumer.
If whales didn't exist, nobody would be able to, go whaling. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like if people weren't willing to spend, like, for example, the term whaling in terms of gaming is the people that will buy every single piece of DLC or microtransaction content they can get for a particular app. Like it's not legit whaling.
I mean, the bigger problem too, though, was the acceptance of all the cosmetic stuff.
See, I actually don't mind when it's just cosmetics. Like that has never bothered me. I don't care if my character is the generic, Master Chief versus he's got like this Hayabusa Knight suit of armor on Halo. Like I just don't care.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm gonna go back to the horse armor in Elder Scrolls. Okay,
yeah, I'm not saying I like it. I'm just saying I'm willing to tolerate it.
Yeah, but okay, I think the problem is that when you allow such a microtransaction-y thing with just cosmetic things, it's like that slippery slope, right? Where it quickly
I'm not saying you're wrong.
Yeah, but it just quickly becomes little pieces to create a full game. Because, it's cosmetic. Now it has an attribute to it. Yeah, see exactly what Colors of Gaming said.
It's probably red. I'm assuming it's red.
it's something that you should try to. It's like that's a reward concept, right?
Right.
Different looks, different armors, all of that stuff is things that you should theoretically be able to unlock in the game through achievement. And they changed it to be purchase. That's how they got the whole pay to play concept. Well, pay to win technically, because it's that slippery slope where it's like, oh, it's just cosmetic. Oh, now it's a special sword with 1 extra damage. Oh, now it's the glass cannon of one hit wonder, right? So it,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this necessarily has to do with video game laws, other than maybe some more strict regulation on what you're allowed to sell to gamers. Like,
no, it just comes back to the same thing, right? It's the laws are unnecessary because people like I'm using this like cosmetic thing. It's like the problem isn't the laws, right?
it's the people willing to buy the things that
Yeah,
are being
because they're
sold.
just going to change it. They'll tweak it to whatever the
They'll
law
change their
allows.
marketing tactics to fit
Yeah.
whatever the consumer is willing to
Oh,
buy.
they'll pixelate it so much until it's no longer copyright. Like workarounds that exist. And they'll just keep doing that as long as people accept it and buy it. It's like it's a culture problem, not a law problem. Because if your culture goes against what the law wants anyway, it doesn't matter. It's like, for example, prohibition.
That didn't work at all.
It didn't work at all because the culture is not a
Nobody was
prohibition
willing
culture.
to throw away alcohol.
Exactly. So as long as people are willing to throw away money on stupid things like loot boxes and all of that, the laws aren't going to do a dang thing.
So I will say, though, in regards to what you're saying exactly, if I have the choice between the current version of cosmetics that I can buy and the pre-order exclusive DLC only at Target, only at Walmart, only at GameStop,
Oh, yeah, I hate that shit too.
I will happily pay 99 cents for 5 different skins instead of having to find all 5 versions at some point to get the DLC codes. Like, that's just ludicrous in my opinion. The stuff they used to do. Like, yeah, it's cool.
I mean,
and at the end of the day,
advantage.
it is probably just, well, no, I mean, for Dead Rising 2, there was a very specific thing. They actually created Dead Rising 2 off the record. Each of the DLCs were only available at specific stores, and you would get specific attributes for the suits you would wear. So I was like, I mean, eventually Capcom made the right decision and said you can just buy all the DLC for like $5.
Right. I mean, let's also just have the big elephant in the room conversation about the video game laws usually, except for if we're honest, except for this one thing about the loot boxes and with how Europe's going after it. It's typically been trying to blame video games for
different things and then censoring that content.
For different things, which I would argue is also culture. It's
the arcades. He's talking about the arcades. Back in my day, only had to pay 25 cents for an extra continue, right? Drop a new quarter in the arcade cabinet, keep going. I mean, technically, that was a form of this, a very similar method of gaining money.
Okay, but in fairness,
but you couldn't access it everywhere. You could only
the
access
average person with how video games changed, right? They changed the payment model to how many hours of gameplay were in it.
Yeah, I mean, fair enough. Yeah, that's a fair point. But yeah, the arcade was like you were paying for short-term access to a game, and when you ran out of your time,
you paid for a certain amount of lives. That's what you paid for.
You knew you didn't own it. You knew that you did not have, unlimited access provided unless you're going to pay like $100 for the day or whatever.
And your parents had to give you quarters.
Or if you had quarters for the arcade, then you could go and play whatever. But yeah,
you had to earn them somehow or get them somehow. There was a control mechanism. It wasn't just like, oh, here's my parents' credit card on the phone. Let me rack up $1,000. I remember that article.
Speaking of arcades, though, we took our kids to a hotel as actually like part of a state park thing, but it was cool. Right. But they had an arcade in the hotel, and in the arcade, it was, in my opinion, it was very predatory for parents because it required a credit card to get a little arcade card thing that you could load up with a certain amount of money, and like the minimum was $10. I was like, really? Like, I'm not gonna do that. Like, but I was looking through the machines, and like each of them costs $1 a place. Like the minimum plays you could buy is 10 essentially.
I was gonna say, man, that a lot of those games have gotten pretty expensive.
Yeah, $1 a play for an arcade. Like the
Over
only time I've done
some places are over $1 too.
The only time I have played it, oh yeah, there was a few. And if you want to play 2-player, it was $2.
Yeah.
The only arcade experience I've had in the past probably decade was when Will and I went to Dave and Buster's, and we got some of these unlimited cards with our meals. So we literally had no barrier to continue playing, and that was super fun. Actually, we really enjoyed going to Dave and Buster's on one of those unlimited cards with an unlimited meal deal thing. That was cool.
I'm not gonna lie, arcades give me a little bit of
the heebie-jeebies.
Not anxiety, but like choice paralysis, because I don't want to like pick the wrong game to waste my money on.
That's why the unlimited cards were great, because we could just go machine to machine to machine to machine to machine, right?
So I always find myself I have to walk down the entire arcade. Got to do a search, make sure that like I find what games I actually want to play, and then like rank them, and then I figure out how to spend my money. Yeah, I'm not the most fun to bring to an arcade probably, but
just pick Burger Time. There you go. My favorite arcade game I've ever played though was Halo Fireteam Raven. Will and I sat down and played the entire thing all the way through. We got special achievements on our Halo Waypoint, whatever you want to call it. It shows up on our Xbox profile too for finishing that. There's only like one achievement. It's basically finishing the game.
Right.
But if we didn't have those, unlimited cards, I think it would have cost us at least $5 to finish the game.
Right.
So
I will say this about going back to the laws a little bit. I will say one thing about it that I have to concede on, the point being that their justification for some of the laws about the violence have some grounding in fact in the format of, you look at the games that became really popular like Zipper Entertainment, how they started off as like a military simulator game. Actually, yeah. So like some of those companies that started making shooters and stuff actually started off like just making simulator games.
Zipper Interactive.
What?
Is this the company Zipper Interactive?
I believe so, yeah. They're the ones who made Mag and stuff, I thought.
Okay.
Yeah, SOCOM, they had all that.
Oh, yeah, that's right. I did know them. Unit 13. Yeah. Okay, I knew Zipper.
So their origin story, they were making military simulators. And part of the reason that the simulators were such a big push at one point was because the military found out that that you can desensitize a person to the concept of pulling the trigger at a human shape. It's no different than actually drilling and all of that. The problem, because when you put someone fresh into combat and they don't have that experience with pulling the trigger, there's people they don't actually want to shoot at a person. There's a huge amount of hesitancy in that. Mm-hmm. So it's not, the thing is, it removes the resistance to actually aiming properly. Like that's all it does. Because it does not increase your prevalence towards violence.
Maybe what we should do, Andrew, before we dig into the details, is maybe go through some of the actual laws that were proposed instead of going at it this way. But one thing I can say about this desensitization of violence and different stuff like that is that a movie, a TV show, or any other form of entertainment could give the same exact issue. And so it's up to like parents and the individual to make the right choice on what they're playing to, make an appropriate choice for yourself, your children, your family.
Right. I agree. But I have to point out that it's not technically desensitizing you to
And I
violence.
just want to say shout out to Pete. Glad to see you here. I was curious if you'd ever have another channel. Good to see you there. So hopefully you're doing well. All right. Moving on. So this is like a brief timeline. It's actually on the website, the National Coalition Against Censorship. So like they might have a slight bias, but
Right.
we'll just roll with it because they have a pretty good timeline here.
Well, let's be honest. If you have to have a bias, make it against censorship.
I mean, we've pretty long maintained like censorship is not a good thing. That's pretty much been a theme on this channel from the get-go. Yeah. Will and I, when we started it, we basically said like we're not pro censorship, and like so we actually had a video on the FEPA, the Family Entertainment Protection Act, that was proposed back in 2005, I believe, and that failed miserably. And we were kind of laughing at some of the propositions they made in that law, and I was like, geez, this would have ruined gaming right at the time when gaming was starting to get big if that would have went through.
I mean, Chris, First Amendment. Okay, you don't. If you favor censorship, you got a problem. So,
all right, let's move through here. So, in 1971, the first arcade video game is released. Nutting. That's an interesting way to say that. Nutting, an early arcade game manufacturer. Oh, Nutting is the manufacturer. Okay. Produces 1,500 computer space machines. The components are packaged with a 13-inch black and white TV set and a futuristic-looking cabinet. First arcade game is released, but the public finds it too difficult to play. The following year, Pong, a simple tennis video game, is released in local bars to great success. Okay, so that was 1971. That's like the grandfather, the first year of gaming that really exists.
Right.
1972 is when you get the first home console. So you get 1972 is the Magnavox Odyssey. For those that don't know that, there's a really great channel out there. I'll just quickly plug it. I'm trying to remember what the name is. Well, I can find it easily. Hold on. Go to YouTube and find it that way. Let's see. I think the title of the video is like every Magnavox Odyssey game in one playthrough. I can never remember this guy's channel name, but I always love the channel and like what he does with the like playing every game for a specific console.
Okay.
Magnavox Odyssey playing every game. Frame Raider, that's the name. Yep, Frame Raider. This guy. So this guy actually spent time, money, and effort to get into every single game ever released or played on this console. And man, that was a engineering feat to even get this thing to run. I mean, this is 1972. This console is 50 years old.
Yeah.
So anyway, shout out to Frame Raider. You have an awesome channel. All right. So yeah, 100,000 units are sold. Many people buy it because it's the closest thing to a home version of Pong. Here's where we get into the first censorship, whatever you want to call it, first controversial video game. But it seems like it was more that the game was pulled by the manufacturer than from outcries from the public rather than, any law reason. So here we go. First controversial game, Death Race, was pulled off store shelves. The objective of the lo-fi black and white game that looks like a slightly more advanced version of Pong is to earn points by running over as many gremlins as possible within a given time frame. According to video game historian Stephen L. Kent, what got everyone upset about Death Race was that you heard this little when the person got hit.
There's nothing wrong with this game.
No. I mean, but you got to remember this is 76.
Yeah,
timing is part of the reason. Like now, this next game I have some issues with. We'll get into in a minute.
I guess the thing with that, right? The thing with that is I'm okay with it being pulled because it just didn't have a good enough audience, and people just didn't like it because of bad taste or whatever.
Well, this is how this is supposed to work. A product hits store shelves, and if enough people don't like it or don't buy it, then the product manufacturer can take what the public is saying, make a decision, pull it off the shelves. It doesn't require the government to get involved when enough people don't like something.
Right. I'll say this though, when you get the next game, as much as the next game is controversial, I just find it problematic when people like protest content of like a store to a certain extent. Like,
yeah, I mean, if you
actively
don't like
protest.
something, don't buy it, right? Like,
Right. Like
all
the
right,
company's gonna
let's
go
get
out of
into it.
business.
Yeah, exactly. You know, speak with your wallets. Like, if you don't
Yeah.
like, that's like, I get so frustrated with people that complain about Madden but keep buying it.
Right. Like
If you
right
don't
now,
like
people.
something, don't buy it.
Right. Like nowadays, people will protest something, but they don't just like refuse to buy it.
And that's really the answer if you don't want something
Right.
to happen. So here we go. 1983, Custer's Revenge. So I'll read this in the most cleanly way possible. In the game Persona of General Custer, because I don't understand why this game was even produced. I guess it was meant to like.
I think it's
I guess it was
intended to
meant
be.
to shock the shock value. The player runs from
Yeah.
enemy arrows toward a Native American woman strapped to a pole. Once there, Custer would get, for lack of better words, have some fun against the will
Relations.
for points.
Relations. They
He
had
would
relations.
he would get into some very heavy and illegal activity with a woman in the game. Which that's not to say that's never happened in a game before. Well, it might in this case it might have been the first time. I actually don't know. But
it might be the first one.
that
That's
might be the
pretty
first
old,
time
man.
that actually happened. But
Yeah,
anyways,
it's pretty
long
old,
story
man.
short, because of this particular aspect of the game, 250 protesters gathered at the spot where the public is viewing the game for the first time and never finds much success. So, like, I mean, sometimes protesting can have the opposite effect, though, too. Like in the case of, I think it was Doom,
Right.
there was a lot of large protest against Doom, and it actually increased sales because people were like, well, what is this game, you know? But let's get moving on for the next part. Actually, this is where I know a lot about this next one. Here we go. Night Trap was banned. Mortal Kombat was scrutinized. So the Sega CD version of Night Trap was removed from store shelves. And actually, this was the last time that games were allowed to be produced without an ESRB rating, because this is the reason the ESRB was created. So let's move on from this. Let's keep going. Night Trap was removed from store shelves at Toys R Us, and I don't even know what FAO Schwartz is. But in the United States, in direct response to December 9th, 1993, Joint Senate Judiciary and Government Affairs Committee hearing on video game violence. So this was coming off the heels of, was this coming off the heels of Columbine? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. No, if we get into it, I thought Going Postal was the game that had controversy.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. Let's keep going then. All right, so Night Trap is cited as shameful, ultra-violent, sick, disgusting, encouraging an effort to trap and kill women. So the reason why that was stated is because there's a scene in the game where if you lose, like you get the game over screen, then yes, the women get trapped by the augurs in the game, the basically vampires.
Right.
And that's not what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be saving them.
In fairness, that's what vampires are supposed to do.
Yeah, but you don't play as the vampires.
No. I'm saying, like, every vampire story has the woman get taken by the vampires. I don't know, like.
You're making the wrong argument here.
No,
they were trying to say that you are the augurs trying to.
Yeah, but have you ever seen a Dracula movie? Come on. Can
we please finish this conversation with what the point is? The point of this is that it was framed. It was framed in a way. It was framed. Well, that's because the guy that was taking this case to court, famous for essentially like fabricating things. That's why he got disbarred. Long story short, we'll get to that later. But
I mean, this is the frivolous lawsuit heyday, man. Come on.
That's true. So
you're getting into the 90s, early 2000s. You get frivolous lawsuits, and everyone's looking for a quick buck.
They painted this game as if it was like the worst thing to ever happen to people in general, and like that's just not the case. Like, yes, there are some more intense for the time period, because obviously things got way more intense later on, but for the time period, yes, it was a little intense, but it wasn't like outside the bounds of what movies were doing.
Well,
so
I just find it outrageous. It's over one scene, and that's you lost, you shameful person. So, like,
pretty much,
it's a bit ridiculous. And
I think the character that dies in this scene or gets taken in this scene, I think that scene alone is basically a game over for the whole game.
Right.
Like, you can't continue on. So like you've screwed up royally if you get this scene to play.
But let's be honest here. The real travesty is that the Senate wasted time having a joint Senate Judiciary and Government Affairs Committee hearing
on video games.
On this video game that you had the choice to buy or not buy. So
that's true. That's a good point. Like nobody's forcing you to buy these games. Now, I will say this: if a game like Night Trap, I guess Night Trap's a bad example because Night Trap's not even. It's pretty tame compared to today's standards.
Yeah.
But let's go a little further. Let's say Doom.
Yeah.
Let's say
Mortal Kombat. Let's go to Mortal Kombat.
Or Mortal Kombat or any of these like rated that are now like rated M games, or especially adults only games. If any of these games that are rated like an M or adults only, like that should be flagged so an adult can make an informed decision. You know, like you can at least, if you see that M, you can go do your own research, decide if that game's appropriate for your child. But at this time, there was no ESRB. So like you didn't have that ability. Like, I mean, I would
Which is when you're getting into that next thing. But if you go to the next paragraph, they talk about doing it to get rid of it.
Before we do that, though, I will say the cover of the box of Night Trap should have clued parents in, like, hey, maybe this isn't for young children. Like there was plenty of signs. I think the
problem is it was sold at Toys R Us.
Yeah, Night Trap original cover. Yeah. See, like I think it's pretty obvious this game was not meant for children just looking at the cover. Like I think you could pretty much make a decision as a parent, like, oh, hey, maybe this game isn't for my
I'm just surprised that there wasn't more bitching about the cover being lewd. But I guess it was more...
I mean, it was... who knows? I'm just saying, like, in general. And then, like, this was another version of the cover. I think this is the cover they used after the lawsuits.
Right.
This was the version they used. I could be wrong. This is, like, the PS4 version, too. So, like, I know they reused a lot of the artwork.
Right.
But, yeah, I mean, just looking at this game, you see vampires. You see an older girl. Like, you pretty much know this isn't a game for children. But now it has an ESRB, which is actually funny story. When Limited Run Games chose to reprint this game, because they were doing like these limited print runs, they didn't have to go through ESRB. Well, as soon as they printed Night Trap, the government found out and basically said, no. ESRB ratings are required for all runs of physical games. So this game actually caused, again, ESRB ratings for a new company.
So here's the thing about ESRB.
We've already done a 25-minute video on the ESRB, so if you have some new opinion to bring to the table, have at it.
Okay, fine. My opinion is this, even if like government did make a law about it, like it's disclosure. Yeah. It should only ever be disclosure. I don't think it necessarily needs to have a rating. I think it just needs to have this game contains these types of things.
I'm okay with a rating provided that the disclosures are honest. And
I just think the disclosures need to be honest. I don't think you even need to have a rating system. Like,
I think a rating system makes it easy for a parent to see the rating and then be like, okay, I'm going to at least look at what the disclosures are.
That's fair.
So like if something's rated T for teen, then I'm like, okay, I'm less like I'll look at it, but it's probably more tame. If it says M, I'm immediately like, okay, why? Why is it M? And then I can make an informed decision. And then like if it's E for everyone, like it should be safe.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's just like I think it's the same.
I think it's a nice to have.
But I think it's what I really think is you should disclose what the game is. You should be honest about the product in general, right? Like it should be a requirement for you to say how many hours of gameplay you can get out of the game. It should be a requirement to be like, this is has multiplayer up to 4 players, and this has online gameplay. This has like, you know what I'm saying? Like it should be a thing, because right now, like what I view regulations as in general shouldn't be dictating the product. It shouldn't be dictating anything truly that influences the product really to the manufacturer. It should be purely about making sure that the customer is fully aware of everything they're getting. It's no different than like the side effects thing for medications. Like I think for an example, the laws about medication advertising commercials.
Oh yeah, those
I
are
think
yeah.
personally, I think it should be you should not be allowed to falsely advertise all these happy, non-relevant things happening on the screen with upbeat music. It should be when you list the side effects, it should be purely an info commercial about side effects with the side effects listed on the screen, not
Because
just
you got like a
talked
happy
about.
old guy like,
Yeah,
talk to your doctor about potential
yeah,
diarrhea. It's
because
like,
it's
what?
false. It's technically false advertising visuals versus what is being talked about, right?
There's a
And
disconnect between the happy people on the screen and what they're
yeah,
saying.
so like just like if a video game on its cover put Barbie on it, and then it was a GI Joe game where you're beating the
It'd be
crap out
false
of whatever,
advertising
it'd be false advertising. So it's like I think the main thing is that there's full disclosure,
of
full.
what's going on in there.
Yeah, and I think that's the only thing that I agree with being required, because otherwise it's a false advertising thing. You're coercing people into purchasing something and giving up their money without being honest. It's technically theft if you're not disclosing what the true terms of the deal are.
I wouldn't say it's. I
It's
wouldn't go as
theft.
far as
It's
theft.
theft.
I would.
If you don't disclose the true, like, like if you omitting things if they're bad, right? If you omit, like, for example, you could have a heart attack from this medication.
I
If
would
you
say it's more of a scam than theft
No,
if
but
you
if you
mislead
omit
somebody.
something like that, it's technically, in my opinion, you're thieving from someone because you're not telling them the whole thing. Like,
Well, I think that any game that's not finished and is printed to a disc and sold to me is a scam. So
technically, you're right. That should be disclosed properly on the box, not a complete game.
Well, I think it is. Here's one thing that I think should change. If it says that there is DLC, like, or online required to download something, like, it should tell me whether or not that DLC completes the game or if it's an update.
True. Yeah.
So, like, if it says you're going to require a 9 GB download,
Yeah.
is that completing the game or is that an update to the game?
Can I plug this in and play it offline for the rest of
Without
its
downloading?
Yes, for the rest of my life without having that download.
Right. So that should be disclosed on the box. Like, is this required?
Mm-hmm,
And if it is it a DLC or a patch?
And then, so if we're looking at the rest of this timeline,
Let's keep going.
The Phantasma.
No, we're on Mortal Kombat.
Okay. Oh, I mean,
together with Night Trip and Doom. Doom is on this too. Is the focus of the 1993 congressional hearings. This led to the formation of the Entertainment Software Ratings Board as a self-regulated entity, and it deflects potential government regulation, which was good. It was good, but it was bad because on the one hand, it created, the ability for the video game industry to avoid direct government regulation, but at the same time, it added on the overhead of having to submit things to the ESRB, continue to pay the partner fee of being in the ESRB, and all of those other things. It's kind of like other like self-regulatory systems that exist to prevent further government involvement. Like, a lot of industries have that.
My biggest problem with that is that those usually become gatekeepers.
They do. They definitely do.
And that's, I mean, I feel like as long as you meet the intent of that through self-disclosure,
need to.
Yeah.
But then that would require laws for self-disclosure, and that's what we want to avoid.
I don't think there should be. I don't think, like, that's the thing. I don't think we should have to avoid those laws. That's the entire point. It's not that you don't have to create a regulatory body to chase people down for that.
That's a good point.
The customer can simply launch a lawsuit and
say it wasn't disclosed.
Yeah, and that would be enough, right?
Well, I think any game that launched without a full disclosure would become a class action lawsuit if it was bad enough.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you don't need a new game, the Video Game Regulatory Commission. No, just make a law about self-disclosure and make it applicable to a lot of things. I mean, like, it's no different than how a lot of states are getting into trouble now because for the longest time, they geared all their hazardous driving laws to drunk driving, and now they don't know how to test people for smoking pot or
Yeah,
punish people
that is a
for
fair point.
texting and driving, right? If you had just made a reckless driving standard, no
Instead of
matter what
testing
the
people all the
no
time.
matter what the cause was, if you were seen recklessly driving and endangering people, you don't need to have specific laws for each type of thing. You don't have to go review every action. You just review behavior while it
Yeah.
happens, and like, is
Especially
it
in the
reckless?
age of video, you can easily
Yeah,
prove somebody was driving erratically.
exactly. Put a camera on every cop car, and they would be able to say, "Here's the evidence that person was swerving in 2 lanes." Like,
Yeah, and similar to that, like you could easily prove something was not disclosed by recording the gameplay, whether you do it
right?
with your phone camera or, and you know what I've got is like a direct connection to my computer to save footage.
Exactly. Look at
You
how
could
much of
easily send that in and prove it.
look at how many games are just automatically put up on the internet through all the walkthroughs and stuff people do as
Yeah,
soon as they're released.
and
Like,
then you could
you would
easily say like,
know.
"Hey, this wasn't disclosed. Like, I
Right.
didn't know that this scene was going to be in there."
Exactly.
So yeah, here's another interesting one. Phantasmagoria was banned in some stores. Like Night Trap, this game features a helpless female as a central character, except Phantasmagoria is extremely bloody, and sex and violence are closely linked in the game. Now, here's something that in one video sequence has a certain type of scene we don't like to see. The game is banned in some retail outlets in the U.S. So I think that if you are showing content that is already considered, like, you know, you got to go to the back room of the video rental store to even get it, like, you know, be 18 plus, then you probably don't want to be selling that to minors.
Right. I mean, here's the thing. It wasn't banned by government. It was
No, it's
banned
not.
by retail outlets. So if a store does not want to sell something, as long as it was not a coerced thing by
Right.
like a local official or whatever, then there's no problem with it. That person has the right not to sell it.
Yeah.
Like,
Like there's no law
yeah,
requiring that a store sell a certain product.
yes. The laws, the law basically currently says that they cannot be banned from they cannot be prevented from selling a legal product.
Right.
That's where the law
But
is
there
at.
are laws that draw the line between what's appropriate for somebody under the age of 18 and what's not. So, like, for
Yes.
example, the adults only games, a lot of them are of a sexual nature. And
Right.
those types of games, I am okay with them saying if you're under 18, you can't buy it, because it would be the same way with a video.
Right.
So like that I have no issue with that. I'm not saying that kids can't just go on the internet and search up whatever weird stuff they want to see, but that's different. That's the internet.
I mean, okay, I'm not gonna lie here. I agree with you, but at the same time, it's kind of pointless to make it a law. It should just be good practice, because those kids are gonna get that game anyway.
I'm not
If they
saying
know anyone
that you're
who's older.
wrong, but having a barrier for that, like at least
Right.
some barrier, is not a bad thing.
True, but I mean, like, at the same time, that comes back to culture. Like, the person at the cash register shouldn't want to, sell GTA to a 5-year-old. Let's be honest.
That's probably not the best choice.
Yeah.
How did the
So
5-year-old get the money to buy GTA is a better question.
true. Who knows? Maybe
Yeah.
they're thugging like they're in GTA. I don't know. But
I'll need a triple double Whopper with what is that ridiculous
I don't
order?
remember, man. I don't remember.
I love that video.
Next game one. There's the lawsuit.
Here's the
video
first
game
like
lawsuit.
legit lawsuit. Jack Thompson files the first video game lawsuit. Anti-video games activist and attorney Jack Thompson, this is before he's disbarred, files the first of what to be a large number of lawsuits claiming video games are responsible for violence perpetrated by teens. The lawsuit is filed on behalf of the parents for 3 children killed in the Heath High School shooting in 1997. Investigation shows that the perpetrators had regularly played various computer games, including Doom, Quake, Castle Wolfenstein, Redneck Rampage, I've never heard of that one, Nightmare Creatures, Mech Warrior, and Resident Evil. And access some websites that I'm not
the
going to mention
website
YouTube.
that plowed Boston.
Yeah. And a videotape of the quote unquote basketball diaries, which includes a high school student dreaming about doing something at a school you're not. Yeah, that's very that's the wrong word. Something that involves schools and a certain type of weapon. The suit alleges the producers of the game, the movie, and the operators of the internet sites were negligent in distributing this material to a minor because it would desensitize him, which you already said that is a legitimate thing, and make him more prone to violence. Now, I know the desensitized aspect is accurate, but I don't know that it actually makes you more prone to violence.
No, it desensitizes you. Okay, the desensitization is to make it where you're more like if you were to commit the violence,
you wouldn't necessarily care about it as much.
Yeah,
but it doesn't make you more likely.
It removes your hesitancy when you're committed to doing it.
Yeah.
That's why like you shoot at that's why they have the soldiers when they're training shoot at silhouettes of humans. That's all to desensitize you to the concept of that. It does not make you more prone to violence, though.
The suit was filed in a federal district court and is dismissed for failing to present a legally recognizable claim. In July 2008, Thompson was permanently disbarred by the Florida Supreme Court for inappropriate conduct, including making false statements to tribunals and disparaging and humiliating litigants. Sounds like this guy was a piece of work.
Yeah, but okay, let's also like just to add real quick too. Like the biggest thing that contributes to people committing violence is them themselves having had violence committed against them.
Yeah, no, that's totally accurate.
Yeah. So really
is it
go after
me or is that like really blurry? Can you see that?
That one is blurry.
Huh. It looks great on my screen. I'll just read it. We'll go through it. So Grand Theft Auto causes controversy. And as I would expect, you're literally making a game that's the name of like a specific crime being committed. Like, of course it's going to be controversial right out the gate.
Well, it was the prostitutes thing.
So the game earns notoriety for its theme and approach almost immediately after its release. The player's mission is to drive prostitutes around town, evade the feds, and run drugs and sexual images in the process. Kill lots of people. In 2001, shortly after the 9/11 terrorist attacks, the release of GTA 3 is postponed in order to alter content involving New York City. I do think that in the aspect of creating these fictional cities, it is probably better to not base them in a real place and have a fictional city. Just not for any particular reason other than like it makes it less real. So I don't know. That's just my opinion.
Right. I mean,
I don't have any issue with it per se. I'm just saying that I do think fictional cities, like for example, Gotham, that's not real.
Okay, but it's based on. Come on.
I'm not saying it isn't.
By two specific cities in this country.
I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying that I do think it's better to have fictional cities, especially when you're having, because for example, if you have a real place in a video game and a not real place in a video game, people can't go and visit that area or try to reenact things. Like, for example, when Dexter came out, there was a very disgusting individual who decided to do the act of what Dexter did.
Like, that's because there's crazy people who
there are, and no matter what you do, you can't stop these people.
I mean, okay, have you heard the theory though about why there's more shooters at certain public places now versus in
I'm
past
not
history?
Sure that I want to delve into that topic.
No. It's the people you haven't. Okay, this is fine. There's nothing controversial about it, really. The theory is that you've always had the same number of psychopaths and crazies. The difference is in past history, they were more likely to become serial killers, like Ted Bundy and stuff. Now, the trend for those crazy people is to go do shootings instead. That is one of the theories, because there's this absurd amount of serial killers who you don't even know existed, because if they're at all good at what they do, they don't get caught. So,
like Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, because I mean, there's a crazy statistic, I think, of how many like serial killers at any given moment they believe are actually roaming the country. It's a lot. It's kind of
Really?
terrifying when you think about it. Yeah, it's not a small number.
Not gonna Google that one right now.
No,
I don't want to know.
but there's a theory about that, and yeah, so
I don't know if
you're
I
just
buy the
losing.
theory, but I'd have to look into it myself.
It's just one of those things where it just the form of violence has changed a little bit.
Well, I mean,
because of
if
fame,
you are, if
because they
somebody
tend to be
is,
narcissists. Gotta remember
if
that.
somebody is I've watched I'm not an expert per se at all in any way, shape, or form, but I've watched a lot of documentaries on like the serial killers and stuff, and like the base commonality between all of them is like the sensationalism of it. So I could see that might be appealing to somebody who's already in that state of mind to go
They
do
also
one
like
of
to
those
get
things.
fame. They like to be famous for what they've done.
So if they see that they can quickly gain that notoriety and fame or infamy, whatever you want to call it, by doing something like that, they might latch onto that.
You also they also get a lot of love letters when they go to jail. So
That's disgusting.
you do know about the Parkland guy, right?
Mm-mm.
The
I don't know if I want to know. This is already
the
making
security
me angry.
the security guards at the prison were put in a very uncomfortable position because they had to screen his mail, and he was getting a lot of photos from underage girls. Yeah. So, yeah.
Long story short, here's this guy. Red does kind of summarize what I was saying. It's a little tasteless to base in a real place. I that's kind of the way I'm feeling about it.
It depends what you're doing.
It does. It 100% depends on what you're doing.
Because
that's accurate.
you could just as easily say that placing a Grand Theft Auto game in, like, let's say Chicago, for example, South Side, is bringing attention to a problem that actually exists. So,
So here's the next one. This is the Columbine stuff. So when is the revealed that two students opened fire and were fans of violent games, Doom in particular, people began to blame games for tragedies. Several families of the victims filed a federal lawsuit against 25 entertainment companies for allegedly causing the deaths. The suit was dismissed because another case was making similar allegations in 1997, and they were dismissed by the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals. So yeah, I think it's hard to prove that entertainment causes something because there's usually a lot of other factors.
Let's just.
I'm saying, like, in the court of law, it'd be very hard to provide evidence that something entertainment-wise could cause something.
Okay, but that's because that's not a real thing.
You'd have to have
something like that
legit...
cannot cause it. It can't cause it. You would literally have to have a movement with with an agenda and a mission statement saying go do this.
That's what I'm saying. It would be very difficult to ever prove that and something in entertainment caused somebody to do something in real life.
No, it's not about being difficult. It's about being impossible because it's entertainment and not a movement or a mission statement saying go do this.
It's not a recruiting campaign.
Yeah. So it's like
all right, so here's the next one. This one actually gets dismissed, so it's interesting. The Indianapolis in Indiana, the U.S., enacts an ordinance limiting minors' access to violent games. The city ordinance would have forbidden any operator of 5 or more video game machines in one place. So this is probably an arcade setup, allowing a minor unaccompanied by a parent, guardian, or other custodian to use an amusement machine that is harmful to minors. So that's an interesting way to describe it. I'm not exactly sure I agree with that at all. It requires appropriate warning signs and that such machines be separated by a partition from the other machines in the location, that their viewing areas be concealed from persons who are on the other side of the partition. The ordinance never goes into effect and is struck down by the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals the following year in American Machine Association versus Kendrick.
It's just them trying to do the XXX section.
Well, yeah, they want to have the adults only violent video game section.
I think so. I think this person just hated children having fun at the arcade he used and was like, I want it to myself. I think that's really what it is. And he was sick of having kids there making all this fun noise where he couldn't complain to the parents that they were too loud.
So here's the next one. The Surgeon General finds little correlation between media and violence. Like as a whole, all media and all violence finds very little correlation. I do think that certain individuals could be geared to that sort of behavior, and being desensitized to it from any form of entertainment could lead them to have stronger feelings towards that. But I definitely don't believe that somebody who didn't already have that set of behaviors inherent to them, this would not have that impact on them.
So, all right, my comment on that one is entertainment at best can inspire. It will not
exactly
cause you to take up a path of violence.
I'm just saying somebody who already has the proclivity to commit that kind of act.
The person already has to be broken in the head. Like, let's be honest.
This is going to be an individual who needs help.
Yeah.
Some kind of help in some way, shape, or form. I'm not going to say what kind. I'm not a doctor. I don't know what kind of help they need. I'm just saying they need some kind of help, and they're not getting it. And being desensitized to the actions, may lead them to be more likely to do it. But they're already in that state of mind, not because of the gaming.
Right. They're a violent person.
Exactly.
Who's going to be violent.
Like, here's the easiest way I can describe my feelings here. If Ted Bundy existed in the realm of video games, I don't think that video games, I personally do not believe at all that video games would have changed his path for the better or worse. Well, maybe for the better. Who knows if he found the right game. but for the worst, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't think it could inspire him that way.
At best, I think he would have just rehearsed some things in a game and would have been like, oh, well, using this axe instead of a crowbar, it seems a little bit more effective. And then he would have been an axe murderer. That's all I'm saying. Like, it wouldn't be any different than if he saw, like, Texas Chainsaw Massacre or...
Well, fair enough. Yeah, no, I agree. And there would have been nothing that would have blocked him
or whatever other crazy thing.
So here's the next one. 2002, federal legislation proposed to ban the sale of violent games to minors. U.S. Representative Joe, I think it's Baca, introduces a bill that would make selling or renting video games to minors a federal crime. The bill is aptly named the Protect Children from Video Game Sex and Violence Act of 2003. Washington State introduced a similar law, which would fine retailers about $500 for selling violent video games to minors. Now, I believe this one got shot down. More GTA controversy, because it just says proposed.
Mm-hmm.
2 Tennessee families sue the maker of Grand Theft Auto and other video game companies after a shooting in which the killer claimed he was imitating Grand Theft Auto 3. This is where you were saying that inspired thing. The suit is dismissed. Later the same year, NYC Mayor Michael Bloomberg pressures the game company to remove the line "Kill the Haitians" from GTA Vice City. I didn't even know it was in there. Following a wave of protests by interest groups over discriminatory content, the groups also file suit in federal court and then removes the case to state court in Florida, which is expected to be less First Amendment friendly. It's interesting. I don't know anything about this one. I don't really have commentary on it.
I mean, it's in the context of a game. Good luck. Right.
Like, there's a lot of weird things said in video games.
I mean, okay, let's could you not say the same thing in a movie? Could you not say the same thing in a book?
Oh, no, I'm
saying you
can. Yeah, like, I don't think there's any... You don't like the game, don't buy it. Like, who cares?
I feel like the problem is the silent generation of crazies in power.
Now you're getting into some fourth turning lingo.
Yeah,
that's fine.
I am. I'm calling out the generation that got freaked out by War of the Worlds being broadcasted on radio. Okay, that's who I'm calling out. That's the generation that tries to pass this crap.
Well, okay, so I guess that'd be a good time to break into this. Like, so the current makeup of government, and this is influential to gaming.
Yeah.
The bulk of people who are in government currently did not grow up with video games.
Yeah,
They barely grew up with like movies the way they are now.
I mean, currently the silent generation is like what, 25% of Congress or something crazy
Well,
like
back
that.
in the early 2000s, they made up a
Well,
lot more.
no, I mean even today, I'm saying they still make up a crazy amount, which means at this time they would have been a pretty big bulk of it.
So well, maybe it would be a good idea to say what years the silent generations are from.
I
Is that the
forget,
40s
but
to
it's
60s, or is that
it's
the
basically it's the people who grew up
no, be the 30s to 50s?
It's the kids who are too young to fight in World War II.
Let's look up the silent generation. But it is a good point to point out, like, these are the people that did not grow up with gaming. So like they're making laws about things they did not grow up with.
And here's the thing. People might think that was a joke, but no, they literally freaked out when War of the Worlds was broadcasted over radio. They literally thought we were being invaded by aliens because some guy talked a very compelling campfire story on the radio. So yeah, they were too young to fight in world wars, basically.
Yeah. Yep.
But that's who's trying to pass the law. People who couldn't handle the spoken word. So when they see GTA,
well, that was actually that led to laws on what you could broadcast on the radio.
Yeah, which is a stifling media. So it's extremely stifling media to be on the radio. Yeah. The only radio stations that have any freedom are those who are on satellite radio.
Because it's
There's
a different
reason it's popular.
set of laws. Yeah, different set of laws there. All right, so here's the next situation here. Law professor speaks out against video games. Professor Kevin Saunders argues that video games cause violence, and violence should be included with obscenity in a category of unprotected speech. I'm not exactly sure what he's trying to say. I was pretty sure that obscenity is actually part of protected speech, especially
not at the time.
Oh, it was not?
Not well, it is, but it is not in the sense of there's obscenity laws with regards to advertising in public spaces.
Oh, okay.
There's obscenity laws with regards to the radio. Like, you're not allowed to use many cuss words on the radio.
Gotcha.
There's the one comedian who went through all of the words you're not allowed
George
to
Carlin,
say.
Right?
Yeah. And
I like George Carlin.
That has been loosened to an extent, except on television.
Well, that's the big thing. You're not actually broadcasting the game. You bought it to take home for yourself. Like, this is the same as like an uncensored movie. You can buy an uncensored movie, take it home, and enjoy it in private use.
Exactly. This is just a person who's salty and wants to get more, expand the power of that law so he can get more business. He probably wants to write the law so he can be an expert consultant for big money. That's really who he is.
All right, here we go. So then a psychologist criticizes claims about links between video games and violence. Guy Cumberbatch, PhD, director of UK Communications Research Group. Oh, another UK guy. Writes in a report that the evident weakness in the individual studies and the general pattern of inconsistent findings would not normally lead us to expect researchers to make any strong claims about video games. However, this is far from the case. As with other research on media violence, some of its strongest claims are made on the most flimsy of evidence. The real puzzle is that anyone looking at the research evidence in this field could draw any conclusion about the pattern, let alone argue with such confidence and even passion that it demonstrates the harm of violence on television, in film, and in video games. I would pretty much agree with this guy. Like, I don't think you can make the correlation that a video game can cause somebody to commit violence.
Can't. It's about values, man. It's really what it comes down to. Self-control,
I
values.
An individual can always make their own choices.
Yeah.
And if something is bothering you, then don't play that game.
Gotta give the disclaimer. If someone suffers from mental illness, they might not be able to make their own decisions.
If somebody is suffering from mental illness to the point where they can't make their own decisions, then they need different help.
I'm just saying, man, schizophrenics exist and
they do.
Split personalities exist. So
I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying that, like, those people who need help, regardless of what they choose to do with their lives.
But a video game is not going to cause that. That's what
I've played Madden and I haven't tackled anybody in real life. leave it to our viewers to lighten the mood.
That's true.
All right, here we go. So in 2005, oh no, this is right here. Federal court finds Illinois' video game statute unconstitutional. So this is 2005. In Entertainment Software Association versus, I have no idea what that name is, the Northern District of Illinois grants a permanent injunction against enforcement of a law that bans the distribution to a minor of any video game with certain violent content. It requires requires such games to be labeled as restricted to adults only, and requires retailers to post signs explaining the industry rating system. Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals later affirms this decision. So here's something else to keep in mind. Like, even if you were to impose this law specifically in whatever district this is occurring in, you know how easy it would be to go to a different store in a location slightly out of bounds of this place and just go get it?
All the video game stores would be just like the liquor stores. They pop up on the border, on the right side of the border, wherever the laws are nicer.
Yep.
If you live in Michigan, all the liquor stores were located in Wisconsin.
Or in Ohio.
If you're on the border. Or Ohio, yeah. If you live anywhere.
But Ohio has even weirder laws. So you can't buy alcohol on Sundays.
Yeah.
Such weird laws in Ohio.
But
you can buy.
That Michigan had some weirder laws at one point. That's just
so Ohio. So this is just a short detour, but Ohio's laws are like you can't buy specifically liquor on Sundays. Yeah. So you can still buy some beers and I think wine.
Yeah.
But you can't buy hard liquor on Sundays, which is the
Minnesota's
weirdest
the same
law I've ever heard of.
No, Minnesota's the same. It's actually very common.
Is it?
Yeah.
Well, Michigan definitely has easier laws now.
Yeah, I mean, well, if you ever look at the drinking rate, Wisconsin has the best liquor laws for a reason. Let's just put it that way.
All right, so in 2005, I believe this is FIPA, when FIPA was thought up. Senator pushes for video game regulations. U.S. Senator Hillary Clinton advocates for new regulations on video game sales after controversy over the sexually explicit hot coffee modification was made available online for Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. So I have a big issue with this in general. This whole situation stems from the fact that somebody modded a game to get content out of it that was not accessible in the published version. So this is a non-issue.
They don't want freedom.
Somebody would have to put it in their computer, mod the game, and then they would have access to it.
I mean, have you noticed that the worst laws come from 3 states?
Yeah, I mean, especially when it comes to
3 states that are consistently wanting to do stupid shit. So
again, well, when you look at just specifically against censorship against gaming or entertainment or media, like yes, there are specific states that seem to always have it out for ideas in gaming and entertainment in general. They want to have they want to hold.
I'm okay listing them because we've read where they're from already.
Yeah, I mean, let's be
New
fair.
York, Illinois,
California have all played a huge part in the censorship of gaming.
Yes.
I will say it. I mean, what did she want? Warm coffee?
No, she wanted the McDonald's coffee that was burn your skin off hot, apparently.
Yeah, so I mean, they're not allies of the gaming industry. That is for sure.
Yeah.
All right, so here we go. Professor debunks even though like a lot of games are actually produced in some of those states, which is even weirder. All right, so professor debunks theory of link between games and violence. Henry Jenkins, PhD professor of communication, journalism, and cinematic arts, University of Southern California, writes, according to federal crime statistics, the rate of juvenile violent crime in the United States was at a 30-year low in 2005. Researchers find that people serving time for violent crimes typically consume less media before committing their crimes than the average person in the general population. It's true that young offenders who have committed school shootings in America have also been game players, but young people in general are more likely to be gamers. 90% of boys and 40% of girls play. The overwhelming majority of kids who do not play or who play do not commit antisocial acts. My goodness, my brain is not getting there. So I think this I
think that just goes right. That goes back to the, the old saying that idle hands are the devil's playground. So
I mean, yeah, if somebody's not, well, that's like another thing. Like the bulk of people are online on social media to some extent. If somebody doesn't have social media, that's kind of the anti-norm at this point.
But what I'm saying is the people are too busy playing the games to be out doing the violence.
I agree with you. I'm just saying, like, it's people are more normal to be playing these games than not at this point. So, like, when you're studying the population, of course, the bulk of people will have played a game.
I guess at this point it is 90% of boys, they said. So, yeah.
And that was 2005, yeah.
In 2005, which would make
it's probably even closer to 99% now.
Yeah, probably.
If you have access to a game, you're probably playing it.
And if you count Farmville, the number of girls has gone up.
Well, Candy Crush counts too. I mean,
yeah, Candy Crush, that one too.
All right, here we go. So Michigan and Louisiana video game law is found unconstitutional. And Entertainment Software Association, which, by the way, that's the ESA. That is the actual association that runs the ESRB, just for anybody who doesn't know. And Entertainment Software Association versus whatever that. Granholm says the governor of Michigan at the time, and this is probably the governor of Louisiana, Fody, however you pronounce that. District courts in both them respectively grant injunctions against state laws barring dissemination to minors of video games with certain violent content.
So here's the thing. That law was still being treated as active when I was younger because I got carded to buy rated M games when I was like 20. So
fair enough.
Just saying. Well, I don't know why I look so young, but
some
GameStop,
stores,
bro. It was
some
GameStop.
Stores still choose to enact their own policy.
That's fair.
Despite having no laws, which that's fine. A business can choose to do what they want on their own property, provided it is legal.
Yeah, but still, I was 20. I didn't look like I was under 16 or whatever the age.
You look like a 15-year-old, Andrew.
Oh, shit.
All right, here we go. 2006. Thompson files more lawsuits against video game creators. Now disbarred. So he's disbarred at this point. Attorney Jack Thompson.
He doesn't stop, man.
He doesn't stop. He never sleeps.
Never stops.
Files a lot. He probably got lots of money from people that agree with him to do all these lawsuits.
Tons of donations.
Files a lawsuit against several video game companies claiming Grand Theft Auto Vice City caused a teenager in New Mexico to act out, copycat, replicate, and emulate the violence when he took out his father, mother, or stepmother and stepsister. They also filed a suit in Florida to have the video game Bully removed from store shelves. I actually thought Bully was, isn't that one where you change your behavior and actually become a good person, or no?
You have to.
You have to, or you don't have to?
No, I don't know if you have to.
Okay. Called the game a nuisance and a certain event simulator. Florida judge determines there's no content in the game that was not already on late night television. Exactly. Like,
now, let me just say something. If bullying is a bigger problem than video games.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
For causing the violence that they're talking about, and if a kid is being a bully in a video game called Bully instead of being a bully cyberbullying people today, I think that's an improvement. I'm just gonna say,
if there's anything that can allow you to get good. Actually, that is something I want to get into. So gaming can be a net positive for somebody if they want to get out some of that anger and anxiety and stress by doing those things in games instead of in real life. It can literally
also a distraction.
It's a distraction.
Yeah, like
stress reliever.
It's something else. It's just something else, right? Like
something to distract your brain from the. Some people call it escapism. Sometimes escapism is really good for somebody. Oh, here we go. So it's more of like a bully vigilante game. I've never actually played Bully. I've heard a lot of good things about it. So it's anti-type hero type thing.
I downloaded it on Steam. I have to play it all the way through still.
Okay, I could not remember. Like I've read a synopsis of it once or twice, but I could not remember.
But
here we are. We're back to another professor alleging links between video games and violence.
Oh, this one alleges it. This
Animal Crossing is escapism. Yes, I would agree. Yeah. I've never actually played I have played it on the GameCube, but I've never played the newest version. But it was fun. It was mindless fun for me.
With escapism, like, there's nothing wrong with someone who does it. I guess it's like as long as you're still productive. It's no different than any other vice.
Everybody. I look at it this way. If somebody goes home after a productive day at work and watches television, That is
Which is
the
still the majority
ultimate,
of screen time for people is
that is the
watching television.
ultimate form of escapism because you're literally doing nothing.
I mean, to be fair, reading a book is escapism if it's a
But a book
fantasy
requires
book.
that you interact with the content on the book in order to get, because you can't just look at something and take it in that way.
Okay, let's be honest. It's just what we're splitting hairs on the level of laziness your escapism has to be.
No, I'm saying that
you're
books
interacting with a
require
video
more
game
effort
too.
than TV.
Yeah, so does a video game.
A video game requires more effort than that's what I'm trying to say. I think the laziest form, not lazy, that's probably the wrong word, but the least involved version of interaction between yourself and a form of media is
the most
television.
passive.
Yeah, most
escapism.
passive. That one of the most active things is gaming in regards to consuming media.
I don't know. Depends on the game. FIFA's mindless. Madden's kind of mindless.
It still requires you to do something.
Yeah, but I think reading is
that's
more
one
active
level up.
I think reading is more active than that.
Depends on the game.
Right, but I'm saying like if a sport, okay, compared to a sports game, right? I think reading
depends on the game. Minecraft can be an extremely interactive experience depending on how you play it.
That's fair.
I guess
Minnesota video game banned.
Let's move on to the next part here. Another professor is now alleging links between video games and violence in 2007. Psychology professor Craig Anderson and his colleagues, Douglas A. Gentile and Catherine E. Buckley, published Violent Video Game Effects on Children and Adolescents Theory Research and Public Policy, which they claim that exposure to violent video games and other forms of media violence constitutes a significant risk factor for later aggressive and violent behavior. They argued that society should begin a more productive debate about whether to reduce the high rates of exposure to media violence and delineate public policy options that are likely to be most effective. In their introduction, the authors also claim the scientific debate about whether exposure in media violence causes increases in aggressive behavior is over and should have been over 30 years ago. Dr. Anderson's research has been widely criticized for overstating his results and failing to adequately acknowledge alternate views or limitations on the data of the data on media violence.
Isn't this the same generation raised off of Looney Tunes? You remember all the kids who just beat the crap out of each other because the rabbit said so. So
duck season, fire.
Yeah, like that Road Runner and the coyote. Come on.
Psychopaths. Oh geez, that's funny. Maybe a different time, man. I'm pretty out of it. I got a headache tonight. I'm not doing Minecraft after this. Sorry. All right, let's keep. Well, I literally do have a headache. I had to take some Tylenol earlier. Okay. So the Minnesota video game ban enjoined. In the Entertainment Software Association versus Swanson, the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals strikes down a Minnesota law that bars anyone under 17 from buying or renting a video game rated mature or adults only. Well, if it's adults only, it's probably supposed to be 18 and up.
Right.
Because adults only content is generally speaking.
No. They just decided they decided to do what they refuse to do for alcohol and cigarettes now. If you can join the military, you can play an adult game. That's what they did. Because you can enlist at 17. That's all I'm saying.
Technically, yes. It's more difficult to do, but technically, yes.
But you can do it. So
the same court enjoins a St. Louis County ordinance in 2003 that bars the sale or rental of video games with violent content. Mental health experts disclaim link between video games or games and violence. Lawrence Kuttner, PhD, and Cheryl K. Olson. I don't know what SCD actually stands for. Do you?
Mm-mm.
Maybe it's sociology doctorate?
Probably.
Co-founders of the Harvard Medical School Center for Mental Health and Media write in their book, Grand Theft Childhood. That's an awesome title for a book. The surprising truth about violent video games. It's clear that the big fear is bandied about in the press that violent video games make children significantly more violent in the real world. That children engaged in the illegal, immoral, sexist, and violent acts they see in some of these games are not supported by the current research, at least in such a simplistic form. That should make sense to anyone who thinks about it. After all, millions of children and adults play these games, yet the world has not been reduced to chaos and anarchy.
I mean, I think it's if we're okay. Wouldn't you agree with this with the concept that peer pressure has a bigger influence on child behavior than entertainment?
I think peer pressure has a bigger influence on everybody's behavior.
Right, right. Because, like, okay, for example, social media, I think, is getting legitimate criticism for its impact on teen girls, and well,
Yeah,
and young,
with the
even
Instagram
younger
laws.
with the rise in suicides.
Yeah, because like
And
there's like this perfect ideal that these girls are striving towards that's not realistic,
right,
and
but there's
that
been
is
also
damaging to their social their self esteem.
there was another trend too that became
Tide
not,
Pods.
no, another trend that
That's
they've
an
noticed
awful
in
trend.
death rates, that the other one that's been rising rapidly is accidental deaths, which
Oh, due to like following the peer pressure to commit an act that was seen on social media.
that's what my assumption is. Yeah,
Okay.
accidental death. They didn't explicitly say that when I heard it being talked about on the podcast, but the trend is suicides and accidental deaths have been going up in younger and younger. So I'm gonna say that it's probably those social media peer pressures are causing that. So it's
Well, I
like,
think if you get all of your satisfaction outside of school and your house from social media, like generally speaking, you're probably not in a great state of mind. Like,
right,
and there is an endorphin rush every time you get a notification. Like, it's been proven. I've watched so many
right.
documentaries on like, what the damage that is caused by people who just get all of their
Oh yeah,
joyous activity in life out of social
makes you want to
media.
delete it all. I'm not gonna lie.
It does every time. Like, if I didn't enjoy having conversations with people on this podcast, like I would avoid social media altogether.
Right.
But I do
I,
really enjoy doing
in a
this.
sense, though, I don't necessarily view podcasts or like video content as social media per se, if depending on what it is.
Yeah.
It's not the same as like, oh, I'm just an influencer. I'm like, it's a little different. Depends on the content.
But I would maybe we could have a conversation about social media a different time. Just
Right.
the negative aspects of like positive and negative. There's some positives, but there's a lot more negatives, I think.
Well, it was just what I brought up. It was just relevant to the evidence that they're trying to talk about in the thing. It's like there's no evidence but like you can
There
see
is evidence for other
you can
things.
see what evidence looks like, right? Like there's a legit trend that you can see when something does influence it.
Yeah.
So it's
So here
like,
we go. We're on to the Ninth Circuit against California video game statute. So here we go. In the Schwarzenegger versus the Entertainment Merchants Association, that's different from the ESA. It's a little different. I'm not
yeah.
exactly sure what this
Well, it was
organization is.
something in California.
The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit rules. In some, the evidence presented by the state does not support the legislators or legislature's purported interest in preventing psychological or neurological harm. Nearly all of the research is based on correlation, not evidence of causation. That's what I was trying to get at earlier. Evidence of causation is very difficult to prove when it comes to media, and you would have a very hard time proving it, even in a recruitment video. Let's keep going, though. And
Right.
most of the studies suffer from significant admitted flaws in methodology as they relate to the state's claimed interest. None of the research establishes or suggests a causal link between minors playing violent video games and actual psychological or neurological harm. And interferences that effect would not be reasonable. In fact, some of the studies caution against inferring causation.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just going to say, like, while I don't necessarily disagree with, the advent of laws for safety, like if 90% of people are doing a specific activity in a certain way, like, let's say 90% of people are not wearing hard hats and there's no law that you have to wear hard hats, then 90% of the accidents will be people without hard hats on. And that doesn't necessarily mean that if they were wearing a hard hat, the accident wouldn't happen. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah.
And then on the flip, if 90% of people are wearing hard hats, then 90% of the accidents would be people with hard hats on.
It's always a
So statistics can be manipulated. It's always very easy.
It's always a marketing play, right? It's not a.
That's not to say that's not saying pros or cons of either one. That's just saying like that's a fact. 90% of people are wearing them, or 90% of people are not wearing them.
Yeah, it all comes back to it where it's like disclosures are all you can really ask for, right? It's
right,
like
exactly.
It would be like this. I hate it when they put regulations to make someone like a lawnmower company put labels that you're not allowed to. You should not use it for certain things. Well, if they didn't advertise it for those things, why do you think you can use it for those things? Right? Like, if the company did not disclose that as an intended use for it.
Please don't use the lawnmower to cut your hair.
Yeah. No, don't use the lawnmower to trim your hedges or something.
Yeah. Do not hold it like up there.
Yeah. So it's just one of those things where it's like, okay, they should not have to
work
put
so well.
Yeah, they should not have to put do not use for things.
That's fair.
In their labels. Like,
it should just be like, this is the intended purpose.
Yeah,
and
they're not telling you to use it for this. It's like, okay, just stop. Just stop.
Yeah, like there are definitely at points in my life where I'm like, okay, clearly
it's the most ridiculous thing when you see it.
It is. No, I agree.
Yeah.
Like that'd be like saying, don't use your blow dryer. Or I guess telling people not to use electronics in the tub is probably a good thing because some people might not realize that's a problem.
One, that's a safety disclosure.
That is an actual safety disclosure. Yeah. I was just about to say like the
electric. It's an electrical device. It can electrocute you.
Yeah, it's probably a good thing to put that on the box. I'm gonna take back that one. I'm not gonna say that one. I've also seen like don't play their Xbox in the tub.
Okay, that's silly.
Like, who's playing their Xbox in the tub? I want to know.
How am I creating jobs to better I don't know.
Yeah, you might want to elaborate on this one, just
Yeah, please elaborate.
Andrew wants to know how he's doing that. All right, let's move on to the next one. Here we go. Group alleges violent media present health risk. The American Academy of Pediatrics Council on Communications and Media writes in policy statement titled Media Violence. Exposure to violence in media, including televisions, movies, music, and video games, represents a significant risk to the health of children and adolescents. Extensive research evidence indicates that media violence can contribute to aggressive behavior, desensitization, to violence, nightmares, and fear of being harmed. Okay, I would love to be desensitized to nightmares because then I would never be freaked out by them anymore. Like, that's fine with me.
The thing I was going to say is that's ridiculous in general because it's not going to be the same as like abusive behavior, right? Like seeing violence on a screen is also educational to like what exists out there. So there are benefits. But like I think
you don't want your child to grow up in like, I don't know, naivety, right? You want them to be aware of the dangers that could present themselves.
Right. But
then too much exposure is a bad thing too.
I hope at the same time they're warning about like exposure to porn because it's all about the age, right?
You used the P word. I was trying to avoid whole podcast. It's all good.
I'm sorry. Come on. It's just a word. All right. But it's just one of those things where I think that is way more damaging if someone at a young age. I'm not talking about like the bunny magazine that you found that was your father's. I'm talking about like the crap you can find online.
Yeah.
It's significantly different, right? Like much more impactful on the psyche of a young child.
One could even argue that while one form of media could be considered to some people art, maybe, whereas the other thing you're talking about is always that.
The magazine is not technically different than a statue.
Right,
So
and
yes, it is
they're
technically
already
art.
yes.
It's
I'd
not
say like
different than a
you could
painting.
argue it is that you could.
Yeah. I mean, if the kid can go walk by and see little cupids with the tiny little, squirting, peeing into the fountain or whatever,
Right.
okay, fine. It's not going to be a big deal when they see the Playboy.
They are definitely. It's definitely different than
Centerfold.
seeing the act and seeing a picture.
Right. Well, usually that picture also isn't necessarily showing
A whole lot.
the act.
Yeah, exactly. It's usually not.
Just an individual. So, I think the videos are way more damaging to children. I think violence in movies is probably way worse than video games for kids.
Oh,
because
by far, because you
video games haven't passed that uncanny valley concept. Like, there's something different. It's like they're still in like the cartoon concept, right? Like,
for the most part.
Yeah, so it's not like seeing real people commit violence against each other. So I would say the Saw movies, stuff like that.
I'd say
That would
that's
be
more like to
traumatizing.
inspire somebody who's already got the proclivity to commit that act.
Right. But also, it's not going to have the same impact that, like, oh, your father came home and beat your mother. Like, that's going to be way more impactful on a child than seeing that in a movie.
It literally affects you directly.
Right. So it's like, I just feel like it's a whole lot of, I don't know. It just seems like
I wouldn't say it's I won't say
not a
that
nothing burger, but it's like the focus, I feel like, is
it's so much lower
poorly
on the totem pole of what's going to cause this than anything else.
I feel like the fact that they put music and video games in here is kind of, I feel like they should have been a little bit more. I don't know. It diminishes.
I think
their
music is
credibility.
more likely to incite something than a video game, only because it's repetitive. You can listen to it over and over and over again and get into like a trance. I'd say it's more likely.
I think you are doing the correlation thing. Because
you're probably right. No, you're probably. I'm saying like
because violence happens at
concerts. My first thought wouldn't be a video game where you have unlimited options.
So my comment would be this: violence happens at concerts not because of the lyrics of the music, but because of the
culture around the entertainment.
Maybe there's some culture around the entertainment, but also the fact that humanity has always kind of had that dance around the fire with the drums beating, and it's very primal in a certain sense. So it's
well, think about how many people back in the day.
People are usually really drunk, really primal vibes going.
Well, just step back for a second. What was entertainment for people during the French Revolution? Watching all the guillotines and the hangings.
True.
Like, people would go to the violent acts for entertainment.
That's true. Watching people swinging from the gallows.
It's so weird to think about. Like, I would never want to go to see that.
They would bring kids there all the time.
And do you think that caused more violence in these children? I don't know.
Who knows? But at the same time, maybe it made them feel safer about society because it was criminals being punished. So nowadays, you don't really get to see criminals. You don't really get to see criminals get punished now, do you?
No, they get out of sight, out of mind into a prison, and you hope for reform, which I do
makes you naive as a child. So
I will say this: I do like the idea of reforming criminals if it can be done correctly.
Depends on the crime.
Well, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, there's definitely differences between crimes.
There's certain lines that people should not cross. One of them involves children.
I would agree. As a father, I would agree. There are definitely lines.
There is a landscaping tool that is usually brought up when it involves a tree trimming tool. Playgrounds. You make wood chips for playgrounds. That's brought up on the internet all the time for how you deal with a certain.
Oh God! Now I get it. Okay, I was like, "What are you talking about?"
Okay, yeah, no, it's the wood chipper meme. You've seen it.
Let's move on. Let's get back to the topic at hand here. All right. So the Supreme Court agrees to decide constitutionality of video game statute. The Supreme Court of the United States granted the state of California's petition to review the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals decision finding the state's video game law unconstitutional. The California law limited distribution of video games with certain violent content and barred the sale or rental of video games with violent content. Supreme Court declares the law unconstitutional. In June of 2011, Supreme Court, what was that?
Get owned. That's a 7-2 decision.
That's pretty good. Supreme Court ruled 7-2 that the California law restricting sale and distribution of violent video games to minors was unconstitutional. Majority opinion established video games as protected under the First Amendment, saying that speech about violence is not obscene and that they are as much entitled to the protection of free speech as the best of literature. I will say, I think literature almost always has way worse depictions of violence that you're reading than what you'll ever see. Oh,
yeah. Game of Thrones.
You know how many kids watch that show that probably shouldn't have?
Oh, yeah.
Like, that is far and above beyond anything I've ever seen in a video game.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so here's the last piece of this particular web. And if you want to see this yourself, is ncac.org/resource/a timeline of video game controversies with a dash in between each of those words. So you can see it on the screen, but I read it for anybody who wants to see it themselves. So in 2012, mass you-know-what stirred debate over media violence. The tragic you-know-what at Sandy Hook reopened the debate over the effects of media violence, especially the playing of violent video games. Community groups organized drives to remove video games, and a number of libraries curtailed the playing of video games. Huh?
Wasn't that guy an autistic?
I don't know enough about this one. The Massachusetts Department of Transportation pulled arcade games with plastic guns from rest areas along the Massachusetts Turnpike, replacing them with more appropriate games. The debate had already been stirred earlier in the year after a mass you-know-what in July in Aurora, Colorado. I think that equating
everyone overreacts
across every side of the political aisle. Everybody overreacts to a tragedy like that.
No decision should be made within, well, definitely not the first 24 hours. You should
and making a decision based on making a decision based on one event that occurs is not the appropriate approach to anything. Like, you should always study and make evidential decisions based on what you can measure.
I just feel like people don't take into account that this is an individual who committed the crime, and like they're too quick to like blame
something
objects.
But that's normal for grief. Is blame is part of the grieving process.
It is. But like, they never blame the person. Like, the person can't.
Well, I'm sure they do blame the person.
No. But like,
let's not.
No. They try to blame the person's environment more than the person. Sometimes, like, they try to prescribe reasons for a person. Like, I don't know, man.
There's always the nurture versus nature requirement. Right? Like, there's always the nurture versus nature debate. There's always the environment versus the the environment versus self, I guess. I don't know.
They have found genes linked to being a psychopath. So, sociopath.
You can also study. I guess the thing is like, no matter what filter you put in place, there's always going to be things that you don't want passing through the filter. And actually, it was put very well, I thought, very eloquently by Mr. Zuckerberg in the Joe Rogan interview I listened to, where he said, like, you have to make a decision. You have to either let a lot of bad things through and then accept that the free market is going to make decisions that won't always be good ones, or you place a too strong of a filter and you end up weeding out good people in the process of weeding out all the bad ones. So, like, there are ways to filter these appropriately. I'm not the expert, and I'm not going to ever be the expert in that.
I don't believe there should be a filter on a federal or state level.
When I say filter, I'm talking about catching the mental issues that exist in society. That's all I'm talking about.
Well, I was saying for content. But,
understood. Yeah,
it's a local issue, right? Like, I feel like too many people don't care about their local community enough to recognize who needs help.
Yeah. You know what? If people would just turn to their neighbors and try to help them more often, maybe we wouldn't be in this boat.
I mean, it's the same problem, right? Like everyone's trying to pawn off healthcare on like a higher community level, but no, like they're saying, oh, that group's going to take care of it, but like they don't know who you are. They don't know who's around
Your
you.
community is more likely to be sympathetic to you,
Right?
than people you don't know from an organization that's come in from an external area.
Right. And
To them, you're more of a number than a person.
Yeah.
So, like, realistically, if you can reach out and help somebody, like, I think that is one of the best things you can do.
Right.
You know,
sure.
within the bounds of your own safety. Like, don't go and approach somebody who appears dangerous. Like, don't do that.
Yes. If you know anyone that you like actually know them, they're not gonna like view you as invasive.
Yeah. And
Like,
there's a certain hotline out there for people that you are worried about that you can call shamelessly and recommend that they be helped in some way, shape, or form.
I just want to point out too that in most of these events, like Parkland, for example, and some other ones, the talk, no one's surprised that someone does something. They're rarely surprised. The person's usually been ostracized. They've usually been bullied, technically. And it's just one of those things where after these events, it's like, okay, as a community, why did this happen?
Why did we allow this individual to be treated
like,
that way?
Not just that though, right? Because your community also created that.
Yeah.
So it's like, just because that person had access to certain things, items, right? That's not the problem here. The objects that person had are not the issue. Like, why did this person commit the crime in the first place?
And you can't
What's the
equate that to like
motive?
the video game showing them what to do, that they did it for that reason.
Yeah, like them being
It's not because
inspired
of the
by
entertainment.
something.
It's not because of the entertainment they had available to
Yeah.
them. It's the peer pressure. It's the social aspects. It's the
Right.
culture.
I mean, instead of telling all these kids to go buy bulletproof backpacks, maybe they should all just get a lesson in kindness to a certain extent. I think that would go a long way. Just kindness. You know, Gym Class Heroes didn't name an album as cruel as school children for a reason. You know, like they had a reason for naming it that. Kids can be cruel.
Oh yeah,
right?
yeah, they can.
There's no responsibilities in most of their lives. Exactly right here, that comment. Yes. Yeah. Compassion is not there because they have no hardship. They're living off of whatever their parents' situation is. And I just think that that's not part of the equation here, especially when these laws get talked about. They're trying to blame something other than their own community.
They're trying to find a
handling.
scapegoat to blame.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times entertainment falls in line with what they can blame. And, you know, everybody's like, oh, yeah, whatever. Blame the entertainment again.
Right. I mean, it's okay. It's no different than we brought it up earlier. Prohibition, right?
Yeah.
They tried to ban alcohol
because they thought that would fix the culture.
Because a certain percentage of people turn into alcoholics. Well, guess what? Those people should recognize. You should recognize that they have a problem, and convince them to avoid their problem. Like if they can't, if for some reason lack of all evidence exists, there's no evidence for this, but for some reason a video game causes someone to be more violent. Well, that person has an addiction problem with violence and the video game is enabling that addiction towards violence. That's not saying the video game is bad. The vast majority of people can handle it. That person seems to not, so you target that individual and get them help. It's no different than if they were an alcoholic or a drug abuser or whatever else, or a gambler. You don't outlaw the behavior because some people can't handle it.
Yeah, and honestly, the best way to look at it is if you take the ability to walk into a casino away from a gambler, they're just going to find someplace else to do it, you know, and it'll be more dangerous. It'll be more difficult, and they'll probably get themselves in more trouble.
Exactly. You want these things.
You want a safe place for them to.
Yeah. Well, not just that, quality control too, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's you want things to be on the shelves with full disclosure. You don't want to outlaw the making of certain content. You just want to have full disclosure. Like, if someone's coming in and they're just buying the craziest video games that are just like, I don't know, murder fantasy or whatever, like, okay, your local GameStop should probably, like, your people there that you go and bump into on a regular basis should probably recognize something's wrong, and, like, you know, maybe they tell somebody. I don't know, like, they raise a concern with, like, your parent if you're a teenager.
Oh yeah, if a 12-year-old's coming in and like
Yeah,
talking about what the kind of stuff they're doing,
like how they're playing GTA, there's like,
and they're like describing some of the things they're doing in GTA.
yeah,
and, like,
I'm lighting these people on fire all the time. Like,
you think like, oh, this person might be a pyro.
Yeah, like, you know, it's little things like that, but you don't want to put it underground. Like, you'll get some of the craziest stuff made underground in the secret places. It's like,
outlying
no.
things is what leads to like these black markets and like secret societies.
Well, okay, example, right? The drug trade right now. Everyone who you can't do. The big thing is there's a lot of fentanyl overdoses. Why are there a lot of fentanyl overdoses? Because the drug trade is not legal, and you have to go to shady people who cut their stuff with all sorts of things. Well, they're cutting cocaine with fentanyl. They're cutting everything with it. And people don't recognize that the drugs they think they're getting are contaminated with this extremely deadly substance, and they overdose. Well, if people were buying that from a reputable store that had actual quality controls and a trace back, some trace of logistics back to their factory and responsibility for their
there was
product.
liability on the dealer. Yeah.
So, like, you would have actual, you know, control over the substance. You would have that medical grade meth that a doctor can prescribe a fat person instead of the battery acid meth that you get from the person on the street. So
now that we've demonetized this podcast,
I'm sorry, but like it's an honest comparison though.
No,
it want to outlaw everything.
If you regulate something out of existence, the best case scenario in that world is you never hear about it again. But generally speaking, it's still going to exist to some extent, and you're going to be driving that community into the ground where they're going to be doing it all off the record. It's going to be very, very difficult to track because of the way you've handled it.
Well, and you're going to allow it to grow
in
a way that's very, very bad, because you're not going to have a lot of pushback on potential members to that community. They're going to be hiding. And then they're going to be like, everyone else is bad. And then there's not going to be like a legitimate dialogue. They're not going to have an actual both sides of the discussion when they get like into that world. And it could get scary.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I think the best way to handle things is to let sunlight shine upon any bad idea out there, because sunlight is the quickest cure for
it's the best
stupid
disinfectant.
Things. It's the best disinfectant for stupid things. Like, it's
literally a disinfectant, though.
One of the things that did crack me up about the Zuckerberg, I'm not going to lie, I listened to the whole Zuckerberg interview because I was interested in it. And one of the things that I thought was very entertaining that Joe brought up is like, I want all of the flat earth content to exist because I want to laugh at those people and realize like I am not falling for that, and like, and other people can see it too and like recognize like, oh my goodness, I can't believe one of my friends thinks this way. And then you can talk to them about it.
I still have an hour to go in that podcast. But
do you really? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was, well, towards the end, Joe went off the rails a little bit and he goes, dude, if I was you, I would put all of these crazy conspiracy theories on the front page so we can all laugh at them.
Right,
that was one
right,
of the things Joe recommended, and I just started laughing. I was like, oh my gosh, I can't imagine like seeing some of that stuff front page of Facebook.
Yeah, I'm at a part in the podcast where I actually 100% disagree with everything they're saying, because it's like the way they're talking about it is like, I don't know. I don't think they actually understand the issue that they're talking about.
I think that,
but it's not relevant to this.
No, it's not relevant to this.
I can talk to you later about it.
So here's something that I will say. Video games have evolved with social media, and one of the things that I think video games
Very true. Very
good
true.
point. All right.
There's a lot of magazines for that too at the stores.
Red brought up the fact that Mr. Rogan himself there's a few sites he could go visit if he wants to see front page conspiracy theories. All right, moving on. As social media and video games have evolved, we have now this combo of like you have the Twitch stream of a video game where you can interact with somebody who's playing a game while you play the game while they play the game. And so social media is like inherently ingrained into gaming now.
I think it's been more of a thing for like the esports.
Oh yeah.
But
I think there are some predatory practice. So like we've talked about the predatory aspect of regulation. We talked about the predatory aspect of loot boxes. Now I want to move into something that we haven't discussed yet, and that is influencers on gaming can be a predatory aspect. Like, for example, I'm not saying that like Ninja specifically, but I'm going to use him as an example just because he's easy for people to recognize. Let's just say that, and this is a hypothetical situation, but let's just say that if Ninja got on the airwaves, started playing Fortnite and said, oh, all you kids need to buy this skin on Fortnite.
He kind of does that.
This is a hypothetical. I'm just saying, like, let's just say he says that, like, that is going to influence children, and I know that type of thing should be moderated.
So let's look at it this way. All the company has to do to monetize their user base more is to find someone like Ninja, give him special skins to use in his stream,
right,
and then release a sale of those things, and then those kids are all going to want to imitate their favorite player. And I mean, is it really different than
wanting a sports jersey?
Yeah, or when Jordan wore his shoes? Like, come on.
Okay, I mean, fair enough.
Yeah, like, I don't think it's different. I think the real problem, is that it's inherently geared towards a younger demographic than normal. I think that's the bigger problem.
And then you got kids that have way too much access to their their parents' wallet.
I think the biggest problem I have with this like Twitch streaming stuff is that the audience for it, maybe it's just generational based on like, so as a millennial, more gameplay was what you wanted to do. The torture thing was sitting around waiting for your turn to play.
Yes.
When you were with your friends. So it's like the desire to just watch someone play a dang game is not there to me. It's just not.
I mean, there are some occasions where I will sit and watch a game, but it's very rare.
I will watch something if someone is just really freaking good at the game and found out something in the game that I did not know.
And then you can learn from it.
And I will learn it. But outside of, once I learn it, I'm not watching the video. I'm not just looking to watch the video again. I
will sit with my friends and watch my friends play a game sometimes, but that's like an interactive experience with my friends.
Yeah, but I'm not watching a stranger on the internet play a game I like.
Yeah, I don't find that.
I would rather go play the game. Yeah, I'd rather go play the game myself. So maybe there's the generational disconnect, but I feel like young kids, particularly young, like 10 and younger, are like the biggest market for who is Ninja's viewers. He has a really young audience, like uncomfortable. It's
Oh, Red just brought up the hot tub streams. Those exist. I'm not gonna get into that.
They have the in real life thing right now where there's Twitch thoughts who just sit at the
That's not a
exercise
word
machine.
you're going to be using in this podcast.
Okay, just bleep it out. I don't care. Okay.
Oh man, that's a word that gets tagged. That's why.
Okay, fine. The Twitch girls who
I would just even call them Twitch exploiters. Like they're people that are
Yeah.
using Twitch in a way specifically to
Okay,
get
let's be honest.
their young audience to. It's kind of predatory behavior.
Let's be honest. It's kids who didn't realize that the other site exists, and their parents no longer own the certain magazines, and well, also let's just go the extra mile. Guys don't get the same level of content creation for easy money, so
yeah, I mean, well, it's behavior because young boys seek this content out.
Yeah,
and they know that if it's on Twitch, they can find it. Twitch is generally a safe site in the eyes of parents compared to other sites, so it doesn't get flagged in your brain as like something your children shouldn't be consuming. So it is like kind of like this weird situation to be in where your kid is normally watching like content like Ninja, and then all of a sudden a different type of stream shows up, and you're as a parent, you don't necessarily know that that's happening, and then the kid's like, ooh, I get this content that I wouldn't expect to see on this site, and then they kind of capture that audience, and then the audience becomes enamored with these different streamers who are providing that content.
And if you really want to hear the not caring about monetization opinion I have about the Twitch streaming, It's a Gundam channel is where I'm at on a lot of that. So
yeah, okay. Look, if he,
up to him.
I will say, I like It's a Gundam. I do. He's got very interesting takes on things. I don't always agree with him, but
when
lot
it comes
of times
to the streaming on Twitch, I agree. Let's make him dictator of Twitch for a day, please. It'd be fun.
Yeah. But anyways, we've hit about the end of our rope on this one, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
Just to recap, it's like they got no evidence. They have no evidence to actually say that video games cause violence. And if you want to have anything, it's just proper disclosure, which you should request from every product, is proper disclosure so that you know exactly what you're actually getting when you purchase something.
I agree.
There's nothing else that's really needed. And all of these rules and stuff, it's like, it shouldn't be federal or state level. It should be like your local community making a decision, not like, so it's like if you aren't going to sell to young kids, that should be like a store thing based on the expectations of your community. So I don't know. Anything you want to add, Chris?
No, I think we've summarized it very well. The less regulation on free expression of ideas, the better. And just disclosure and honesty would go a long way.
Right. And like we said too, it's like it's odd. It's getting a really weird level of focus on video games compared to like books and
other forms of the
shows.
I would consider the same category of entertainment.
Yeah, and it's like it's just because it's so foreign, I think, to the older individuals.
It's something they can recognize as different.
It's different, and they just want to say that because the world's changing, there's more problems.
Right.
And that's the easiest thing for them to recognize as different.
Yep.
Mainly because they get no exposure to anything else. So.
Well, on that note, as always, I'm Chris.
And I'm Andrew.
And we will see you
on the next CHRILLCAST.
Bye, guys.